the fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll love this.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optix podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and today I am reviewing the 4K Blu-ray for Don't Worry, Darling, which is now available to purchase at your local retail stores. And I would like to thank Warner Brothers for sending me a review copy for the purpose of this podcast episode. And before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptix@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. So the way that I'm going to break this down is that I'll get into my initial reactions first, and then I'll get into the picture and audio options for this review, as well as the special features for this review. And then we're just going to close on out with our final thoughts and giving my opinion on if you should add this to your home theater collection. So without further ado, we'll be right back after this introduction to Don't Worry, Darling.
Frank has built something truly special. What he's created out here, it's a different way. A better way.
Victory has things money can't buy. I live next door. You wouldn't believe the things I've heard. Jack and Alice only have time for each other.
What is the enemy of progress?
Chaos.
Yeah. Ooh. Nasty word. Chaos.
The one thing they ask of us is to stay here, where it's safe.
I was here when you got here?
Yeah. You sleep in the bedroom.
And we are back. You just heard a little clip from Don't Worry, Darling. This movie is directed by Olivia Wilde and is written by Kate Silberman, Carey Van Dyke, and Shane Van Dyke. And the story is as follows. A 1950s housewife living with her husband in a utopian experimental community begins to worry that his glamorous company could be hiding disturbing secrets. And the cast for this movie is Florence Pugh, Olivia Wilde, Chris Pines, Harry Styles, and many, many more, with a runtime of 2 hours and 3 minutes. And again, the release date is November 29th. So by the time you're listening to this, you can go mosey on down to your little old Best Buy and pick this guy up. So yeah, you're welcome. And thank you again to Warner Brothers for sending us a review copy for the purpose of this podcast episode. And this movie is also priced at $27.99. That includes the 4K combo pack. So you'll get the 4K disc, the standard Blu-ray disc, and a digital copy to give away to whoever you choose. So as far as my initial reactions for this movie, I actually think it's a very fun and engaging movie. I think it's very inspiring. And as expected, Florence Pugh delivers another outstanding performance. And the concept of this movie kept me hooked through the entire runtime. But unfortunately, it did not follow through the farther I got into the movie. We actually covered this review, or this film, I should say, on our podcast a few months back. I'll leave a link to that other episode in the episode notes of this 4K review if you guys want to listen to our in-depth thoughts about this movie. But there are a lot of mysteries in this movie that are to be solved. And I think the story does a good job of keeping you guessing it every time on a first time watch. When it comes to a second time watch, I can't really say that it's as enjoyable because you kind of already know what's happening. You know the big twist that happens. And unfortunately, I feel like this movie can feel very empty and vacant and unfortunately very uninspiring at times. And I also think that this movie is a lot smarter than what it actually is. It reminds me of Jordan Peele's Get Out, but more of like a watered down version. There's not a lot of depth to this movie, in my opinion, at least. And again, you can listen to our in-depth review, which is now available on the podcast. I'll put a link in the description and in the episode notes down below. So that pretty much does it from my initial reactions. Didn't want to get super deep into that because we're here to talk about the tech, the specs of this review. We're here to talk about the picture, which supports 4K Dolby Vision for any TV that supports Dolby Vision, of course, which is most modern TVs that you can find on the market today. And I must say, I got to hand it to them. I got to hand it to Warner Brothers. The picture here looks vibrant and clear. And I also appreciate that they kind of added a little film grain into the mix to make it feel a part of the 1950s aesthetic, which is one of the themes of the movie, of course. It is the time period piece of this film. But another thing that I noticed about the picture is that I could literally see like the sweat in every single strand of hair on Florence Pugh's head. It was insane of the level of immersion that this film brought when it came to the picture quality. There are a lot of abnormal sequences in this film that I think the 4K disc does a very well job and just blew me out of the water, essentially is what I'm trying to say. I loved how beautiful the picture looked with the support of Dolby Vision. There are numerous scenes that pop out thanks to the crushing blacks and the well-balanced contrast ratio. And if you have a dedicated 4K player, you're in for a treat. And especially if you own a OLED TV, specifically maybe like an LG C1 OLED, you're definitely in for a treat because, oh my gosh, it looks beautiful. It is breathtaking. As far as the audio, it comes with the standard Dolby Atmos True HD, as well as English descriptive audio and video for those who are hard of hearing. But I will say, even though this is a very standard mix, I think the audio mix, at least on the 4K disc, is something that I couldn't ignore because every conversation came through crystal clear. Every explosion I heard, every high, every low, the high volume areas where multiple people are talking, it felt perfect and powerful. But I truly was amazed by the clarity of the audio on the 4K disc. There are a lot of movies out there that you have a hard time understanding what the actors are saying. I think a perfect example would be Tenet, where I bought the 4K disc for that. And the explosions, the gunshots, all of the action sequences sounded amazing, but I could not hear a darn word that was coming out of Robert Pattinson's mouth or John David Washington. It was very maddening, but here with Don't Worry Darling, especially on the 4K disc, it's crystal clear. I could hear every breath, every hiccup, every sneeze. It was truly impressive. And to close out here with these special features, there are 2 special features that appear on this disc. More specifically, that appear on the Blu-ray disc, not the 4K disc. That's usually what they do nowadays because, you know, they get the high resolution, the audio, the quality on one disc, and then you get the same movie at a lower resolution, but you also get the special features. Like I said, this comes with 2 special features. One of them is a deleted scene, which is titled Alice's Nightmare. I can't remember exactly where this is supposed to fit into the movie, but it was a pretty cool, like, psychedelic scene that happens, and that lasts for about maybe 45 to 50 seconds. And the second special feature is a featurette of the making of Don't Worry Darling. And this is something that I watched all the way through. It's only about 17 minutes long. I was impressed and glad to see how this movie affected Olivia Wilde and her cast and crew. Although I'm not the biggest fan of this movie outside of a few performances that happen, you really get to see how movies are made. You get to see how difficult movies are made. because yes, making movies are very, very hard, but you got to see the passion and the excitement and the dedication that was poured into this movie. Olivia Wilde kind of talks about how this movie came about, an idea in her head, started from one idea to another. They go through so many of the other actors and what their thoughts of the movie are and how they fell in love with their characters. It's a pretty nice featurette for sure. But unfortunately, that is where the special features end all together. So I think it's semi-okay, fairly okay altogether. But, it is what it is. A lot of 4K discs or a lot of Blu-rays in general, a lot of combo packs don't even come with special features anymore. So it was nice to see that Don't Worry, Darling has at least 2 special features that are on the Blu-ray disc itself. So as far as my final thoughts go, as I said before, I think it's a fun, engaging, and inspiring movie. Florence Pugh runs circles around everyone on screen, including Harry Styles. He's an okay actor. He's all right. But I mean, it's Florence Pugh. She always delivers an outstanding performance. And I enjoyed the movie at parts. In parts of the movie that, there's a lot of scenes within the movie where it really raises the bar for psychological thrillers, but at other times it just didn't feel as inspiring. Like I said, I feel like this movie feels like it's a little bit too smarter than what it actually is. It thinks it's smarter than what it actually is. Again, I think this is just a watered down version of Jordan Peele's Get Out. I wish there was more depth into this movie. There was a few things I would have changed personally. I feel like a lot of movies nowadays kind of just focus around the twist and then the movie ends. And that's exactly what Don't Worry, Darling does. So, it is what it is. But if you are a Florence Pugh or Harry Styles fan, I think it is worth adding to your home entertainment collection. Regardless of what I think of the film, Florence Pugh is one of my favorite actors working today. And it's always a joy to see her on screen. It's breathtaking, personally. But this film is also streaming on HBO Max. So if you're not sure if you're ready to drop that $27.99 US on this combo pack to add to your home entertainment collection, you can always take a test drive, watch it on HBO Max, see if you enjoy it or not, and then pull the trigger, buy it for yourself or buy it for a loved one, a friend, a mother or brother, a significant other, whoever it may be. If they're a Harry Styles or a Florence Pugh fan, I think this is a must add to their collection. So with all that said, that concludes our review of Don't Worry, Darling, the 4K Blu-ray review to be exact. But if you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice and make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend. Whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other, make sure to share an episode of the Film Optix podcast with a movie lover in need. And really quick, what's coming up next / what's out now on our podcast, you can actually listen to our Black Panther Wakanda Forever review, our The Menu review, and our Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery review, which is also spoiler free. So you can just listen to it without even watching the movie and you'll be all set to go. And what's coming up on the podcast as of now, we have a few things in the works for you guys. We have our Willow review, episode 1 through 3, that will be dropping on November 30th. And then we have our Violent Night review and our review of The Whale, which will be coming up the first full week of December. So I can't believe it's almost December already. This is crazy. But those are just a few things that are out now and what are coming up next on the podcast. And with all that said, thank you all for listening. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay in the know. I'm your host, Christian, and we'll see you guys in the next one.